before you get started on this episode of Zapped to the Past, we would just like to give a massive shout out to the following people: Andy Marsh, Cole Hutchinson, David Hearn, Sven Osa, 2000 DC, Gary Heather, Roger McNally, Lee Dove, Ben Granville, Mark Fletcher, Etienne Vettingfeld, Niall Bullitt, Alexander Gosling, Tim TJ Walker, Phil Sowerby, Joshua K, Dominic Kendrick, Rune P, Nick James, Daniel Spreadbury, Peter Price, Richard Davey, Dennis B, AL82 Retro, Liam Carew, Dylan Darch, Alistair McMillan, Mark Schutz, Dan Wales, Gary Wilson, Oscar Jacobson, Brian Howarth, Clyde Radcliffe, Juan Luis Sanchez, Adam Askew, Leo Staples, Jason Hutchins, David Stringer, Chris Snowden, David Winter, Mike's Vintage Tech, John Ebbs, Stephen Quinn, Runester71, and Pete Muller. These amazing people have chosen to back our Patreon at the C64 tier. The support they offer is just amazing. If you want to join them, get a mention in next month's shout out, access to our Discord server, early access to ad-free episodes, along with any special releases we put out, along with being able to ask us questions for these Ask the Podcast episodes, then sign up by the 18th of the month at patreon.com/Zapped to the Past for well less than the price of a pint of beer, because I bought 2 pints of beer the other day and they were £13. So it's well cheaper than that.
Ouch!
I know, £13. So you almost get three memberships for that price. But anyway, there you go. So sign up. There you go. That's it. Let's get on with the show. And welcome to this another special episode of Zapped to the Past. This is an Ask the Podcast special. Number 8. It's number 8, Graham. Number 8 of our Ask the Podcast. Our patrons have fielded us, have just plied us with questions over the past few months, and this is now our duty to answer them. We've answered some of them on our Discord, but it's nice to actually read them out loud and answer them fully with a bit more of a chat between the pair of us. And it's Easter, so we're just taking a bit more of a break from the sort of trying to get through all the games. It's getting harder. Yeah. It's getting harder and harder as we approach the end. It's like anything, really. You approach the end of a project, that last 5% is always trickiest, hardest part.
That's exactly true.
So we're doing that. We're doing this. Obviously, we had a Battle of the Pilots last week with Hooker and Hunter. That was quite good fun.
That was good fun, actually, that. And obviously, it was also Egg Week, wasn't it? Or Eggy Week.
It was massiss egging, yeah.
The annual Festival of the Egg, as I like to call it. I'm probably alone in that, to be fair. But
I think you might be, yeah. But you're also alone in how you celebrate it, which I won't go into. But
no, it's probably best not.
Best not to do that. No, but the annual Festival of the Egg. It's always good. Did you get any good eggs?
I did, actually. I got a classic Cadbury's egg. Cadbury's got dairy milk egg, which is the classic egg. I'm not big on huge Easter eggs, or just eggs, as some people like to call them. Other egg festivals are available. But I'm not a big fan of egg-shaped chocolate, I have to say. Not really.
No?
So, no. I just don't.
You're not a fan of Cadbury's?
I like
cream egg, sorry?
I've gone off them. I have. Over time, I've gone off them. I just find them too saccharinely, sweetly. They've changed the recipe, haven't they? So something's changed about
they
them.
They've added more something in them, sort of thing. There's those Reese's Pieces eggs now as well. You get Reese's eggs.
No,
they're quite interesting.
I don't
peanut
like
butter
that
egg.
Idea. No,
you know,
no. I don't like these combinations. Just give me a plain, boring old chocolate. And actually, I much prefer either proper chocolate, Belgian chocolate, or I guess the equivalent would be sort of the darker chocolates, if you like. I'm not I like milk chocolate, but again, I don't eat a lot of chocolate really at all. Egg week is really the only time I really have a lot of chocolate in any sort of short period of time.
Right.
But I just like hollow egg chocolate. I just like the chocolate, smash it to pieces and eat it. It's a fairly straightforward process, really, when I think about it.
It's not hard.
No,
not hard. I don't use a hammer. I just smash them off my head.
Well, because obviously I buy an egg for my wife and I buy an egg for my daughter, and eggs for all in our family. It's egg week.
Egg fest.
And, but I was overwhelmed with the choices of the egg. I went into Tesco's, other supermarkets were available, and there was just the wall of egg. I was like, oh my, I've never seen so many eggs, chocolate eggs of every description and variety, combinations of things that I never thought possible. Just Smarty eggs that were just orange, just the orange ones. I'm like, what is going on? Where did this customization of the egg happen? Just give me an egg. But no. So many options. It was terrifying.
It's what the Simpsons prophesied again, isn't it? Happy Love Day. It's just everything. There's always something to get people to buy stuff. And the more options, the more things you got to buy, and the more things people want, the more you spend.
Exactly.
And the egg I got was a normal. Got an egg. It was all nice, Maltese egg, but it was small and thin. Like, good Lord, shrinkflation in effect. I know. I want a big, thick egg.
You want the egg to like have a proper, crust, like a bat. You have to bash it really hard to break that. I did on mine, but I put it in the fridge as well, which is, I know some people think that's sacrilegious. But
no, I like chocolate from the fridge as well.
Yeah, I like to refrigerate my eggs, and that's not a euphemism of any description. But by the way, I meant to say, by the way, the one thing I was disappointed with was the quality of the Lindor egg that I ended up getting. And the only reason I was disappointed, one, because it was thinner than I expected, but two, these are supposed to be master chocolatiers. There was nothing mastery about that. It was just as eggy as the rest of them, but thinner and wan. It was wan, Adrian, thin and wan. I wasn't very pleased about that.
Thin and wan. That's kind of the girls I liked when I was a lot younger. Thin and wan. And interesting. Thin and wan and interesting. What can I say?
They definitely weren't egg-shaped, I can tell you that.
No. Thin, wan, and interesting.
Thin, wan, and interesting, yeah.
That's what I like. Anyway, we've got questions. Enough of this egg nonsense. If I get you on eggs, you just go forever.
Well, it was egg week. What can it happen once a year?
It doesn't. Gives you free reign to talk about eggs. Anyway, should we answer some questions?
Free reign. I love your work.
I said free reign.
It's free range.
No, I wish I had. I wish I had. But no, I didn't. No, it was right there for the taking, wasn't it?
You didn't hatch that idea, did you?
I didn't. No. No.
Your mind's filling with egg-based puns. I can see it happening before my eyes.
It's not. I couldn't come up with a decent enough yolk.
God's sake.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's answer some questions. Let's answer some questions, shall we? Okay, the first question we've got comes from one of our longest patrons, our biggest supporters, David Hearn, writer. His questions, got a couple here. Can you bluff in poker?
I don't play a lot of poker, but when I do play poker, I'm not known for my bluffing ability.
I'm all right, but then again, I'm a terrible poker player. I've been told I'm a terrible poker player, but I always come out on top, which means to me I'm a good poker player. I just play it badly.
Oh, you play with people who are a lot worse than you.
No, they're very good poker. I play with people who dealers at casinos and things like that, and they know how to do all the pairs and the cards and what to go and what not to go in on and things like that. I don't have that knowledge, so I just go, oh, they're pretty, and go, and they're like, you should never have gone in on that. I'm like, but I won the hand. Like that's all that matters, really.
There's a name for that, isn't there? That's the sort of philosophy where because you don't know the rules, you're actually more dangerous a player. Doesn't work at football, I can tell you, because I've never known any of the rules of football, and I'm crap.
Yeah, but you were very dangerous.
Yeah, but there's a lot of me moving around at speed, relative speed. Anyway,
that's what I mean. Yeah, it takes a lot to change direction for you. You're going forward. You're going forward.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, there's not a lot going to get in the way. But so you're obviously a better poker player than you think you are.
Maybe I am.
Ironic.
Maybe
are you bluffing right now? Obviously you are.
Maybe I am. I just don't know.
You really are good at poker. You've tried to fool us all, but you had us fooled. But now we know the secret.
I have a secret. I do always generally tend to win, but or at least come out with my money back and everything. So I don't know. Anyway, question. Okay. Second question: favorite Doctor Who companion during the Peter Davison era? Now this is over to you because I don't know, Salcor.
Perry. Well, there wasn't called Salcor.
I'm just having a guess.
Generally speaking, the Doctor's companions are normally human. So unless you happen to know someone called Salcor.
Salcor's a name.
Salcor's the name of a place that's where the trade go, isn't it? Salcor, it's Salco, isn't it? Salco. That's where the trade go. No, my favourite Doctor Who companion during the Peter Davison era, I don't know. I don't remember a lot of the companions' names from that era because it's not my favourite Doctor Who, Peter Davison. So I guess
who does?
Perry was the one that everyone remembers, and I'm not sure that was really massively Peter Davison, but there's also Tegan, I think was one of his. Tegan as well. Perry's famous for two reasons, mainly two reasons. And ironic that it was on the back of Egg Week, two reasons. Her two eggs that she carried around with her were very good.
Enough of this egg-based shenanigans. Told you. Enough of this egg.
But Perry, I don't really remember much about Tegan. And one thing I will say I'm pretty sure it was Adric was killed by the Cybermen during Peter Davison's era, and I actually celebrated that moment because I absolutely friggin' hated that character, pig-nosed bloody Adric. Nothing. When he got killed by the Cybermen, I let a cry of joy, and I was a young child then. Never liked him.
And he's clearly stuck with you.
Yeah, well, you know what? You've got to stick to your guns. When it's the Cybermen, you've got to stick to your guns with them.
You have. Mubar asks us. Mubar is off. I don't know who Mubar is actually. He's off our Discord. Potentially controversial question. What version was the software on your expert cart? I don't think the version 4.1 monitor ever left mine. Again, over to you. I never had one, so...
Well, I had an expert cartridge. However, it was quickly usurped by the Action Replay cartridge. And so I can't honestly remember what version. It probably was 4.1 because I had the version that had the disk drive and the disk came with it. But I got fed up of loading the stuff into the expert cartridge, which is kind of how you did it on the one I had. So the Action Replay, you just press the button. It was all on a chip on the cartridge itself. So all of the assembly, the assembler and all the stuff like that was in there, and the monitor and all of the stuff that I used on pretty much a daily basis for years. That was what I used it for. So I'm sorry to say my expert cartridge kind of got pushed to the wayside, even with its little NMI light. It was favoured by the Action Replay. And I think over time I had three of those, and the last one was, I think, whatever the last Action Replay was, 6 maybe, but I had the last one, which was very powerful as a cartridge, has to be said. So,
there you go. Joshua K78 asks, well, actually, he's got something to say first. Says, congratulations on 200,000 plus downloads. It's nice of him, isn't it?
Sale. Nice. Past that now, we're nearly at 225,000 now.
I know, because that's at least 45 years combined of people listening to the podcast, which is kind of a crazy stat.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I mean, that's some maths, and I'm not going to work that out. So well deserved. Thank you very much. He's got a tongue-in-cheek question. With the rising popularity, are you ever worried Gary Lineker is a secret C64 lover and will happily sit down to the podcast only to discover he's been making regular guest appearances for the last few years? I absolutely love it when he shows up. Him playing Connect 4 with the Zapped past host had me laughing out loud walking down the street. Good old Gary Lineker.
Yeah, well, Connect of course, that's 4? What we're going to remember. Me Connect. And the thing is with Gary, of course, Gary Lineker, is that it's Gary Lineker, not Gary Lineker. Yeah. You've got to remember that. Gary Lineker is a similoid.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very similar, but he has his own head and body. And he Gary sweat, Gary laugh, Gary happy, Gary sad.
Yeah, he always says his name and then states his purpose, doesn't he, Gary Lineker? Me happy, Gary sad, me Gary walking.
He speaks in like a version of Latin, I guess, doesn't he? Which doesn't have those connective words.
Do you know he travels to work? Or he used to. He doesn't so much now, but he travels to work on a big big track. So he tells it how many big tracks forward he needs to go.
Forward 7, Gary forward 6, Gary right 3.
Gary, you're not getting anywhere, and you're on the motorway, for goodness sake. This is dangerous.
Gary eat apple. There's always an apple in the back of him.
Well, that's how he got to work. Of course, he's retired now from his role on television, shall we say? So now he might be at a loose end, and you never know. He might want to roll up onto the podcast, and we'll have to, think about how we involve him, more than we have done in the past. Maybe I don't know how we do that. Maybe play a game with him. I don't know what we do. Won't be Connect 4 though. He just never gets it. That Connect.
He doesn't understand how to play it. No.
Well, he doesn't understand the idea of connecting or fours, so he's never been able to really do that.
Downfall would just sound like an instruction. Oh, get up, Gary.
Well,
Get off the floor.
Do you remember when we tried to play Snap with him? He just couldn't get the idea of matching pairs of things. He's just like, he can't. That isn't a snap. That's an ace. That's a 10. They're not the same.
True.
And then as soon as you put the next card down, snap. It's like, look, the way the game works is that you have to put you have to see the matching one. Then you slam your hand. You can't just put your hand down on it. Not everything's a snap, Gary. Not everything.
No, he got confused.
Do you remember the frustration?
I do. He got confused at Cluedo because he just kept calling it Cluedo. And
he did.
Who's Clue? He kept asking who's Clue. Who Clue? What Clue do? No, Gary, it's Cluedo. Gary do. Gary do. No, Gary.
No, Gary. What Clue do? Does Clue do? No, that's not what it means. Oh, for goodness sake, don't break out the Monopoly, whatever you do. Goodness me, you can't pronounce
Snap? No, Gary, this is Cluedo.
This is Cluedo. For God's sake, no.
Professor Plum and Reverend Green are not to Snap.
No, they're not even the same colour.
No, they're not.
No, it's never worked out well, any of those board games with him. It's just not worth it. That's why he stuck to football. It was a very practical skill and he could run forward in one direction. And more often, if he rolled the ball under his feet, he'd probably walk it in. And we kind of let him get away with that. You know, it made him feel happy, didn't it, for a while?
It did.
Until you have to go into the net and turn him round again because he was just running forwards into the net for about half an hour.
Gary Net. Lee Dove asks us, back when we were kids near the end of term, sometimes the teacher would wheel in the TV video player and just put on a movie for us kids to watch. What was the most inappropriate movie a teacher ever showed to your class? For us, it was the gory Dragon Slayer when they were in year 2. I'm guessing year 2 is like 6-7-year-olds.
Yeah, it must be. I guess that's pretty crazy for that age range as well.
That's not
pretty
good.
bleak, that bit. So do you remember any?
I'm trying to think. I don't. We only used to get the TV usually rolled in on a Friday morning, generally, with the big wooden one with the flaps that would open out, and it was generally for things, kids, sort of educational programs late on a Friday morning. I don't really remember us getting much.
You never had that? 'Cause we had it.
Did you get the film? I never.
Yeah. More towards the end of the last term, if there was like we'd often get, the way we'd done the work or whatever, or there was, I guess the teacher was just bored and was like, I can't bother to teach anything today.
Yeah.
So I got the two things I can think of that were, terrifying. One, we watched The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, wow. Which was, including the weevils in the ear bit?
Yeah, everything, yeah. It was quite grim. And there was, girls screaming and everyone was a bit unhappy about that. And then the other one I can think of which caused major consternation was The Black Hole, which everyone was just like, well, this is so confusing. Yeah. Yes. And then at the end, yeah, exactly. What
just happened?
The bit that I remember everyone freaking out about was the bit where Maximilian kills the character by having these spinning blades, and he just runs forward and he holds up a book, which was a stupid defense against spinning metal blades anyway. But so it just goes, but as it drills into him, he goes, oh, and he sort of makes this horrible gurgly sound as the blades sort of cut into him. You don't see it as such, but that sound and that image lived with me for years. Is there
a bit in, am I confusing it with Westworld where one of the robots gets their face knocked off and there's nothing behind it?
Yeah, that's Westworld.
I thought there was a bit in one, because aren't there sort of people who controlling the ship, aren't they, robots?
In Black Hole, she pulls the mask off somebody, and he's that's
the bit I'm thinking.
Sort of slug face underneath, and he goes,
yeah, that's the bit I'm thinking of.
Which isn't nice. I mean, granted, it's not nice.
No. I'm trying to think. No, I can't think of any particular film that we got shown that stuck in my mind anyway. No. Dan Wales, I think it is, asks 2 questions to ask. Do you guys have time to play modern video games? And if so, what system and games? I guess that's over to me, isn't it? Because
because I don't. So mine's no on both time and games. On that.
Obviously, I do, because obviously I teach game design, so I still keep up with pretty much everything.
Rampant get out clause.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. You wouldn't ever say to an English teacher why you're reading a book.
You wouldn't say that to anyone.
That's true, because I don't read books. Anyway, but yeah, I play pretty much everything. PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, whatever. And just whatever games come that look interesting. I've recently played Return of the Obra Dinn, which was very good. I'm just started playing Atomfall, Blueprints, another one. So I played quite a lot. And keep going back to the usual stuff. So yeah, most stuff I play, depends. If someone says a game's good, I've usually got a system that'll play it on it.
Favourite modern system then?
Favourite modern system? I don't have one. I just whatever I've got that'll run the game. If it's a game on the system, yeah, I don't really care. I play most stuff, I will say, on my Xbox Series X. So if you want a committal one, then probably that, because that's what I play on mostly. Because I've been with the Xbox. I've had an Xbox since the original one, and I've built up a pretty big digital library on there, and I use Game Pass. So, games come out on Game Pass, and I play them. Like Atomfall, Blueprints, they're all free on Game Pass at the moment, so I'm just playing them. So,
are you going to get a Switch too?
Not for a while. No.
Yeah.
No, it's. I think the next thing I'm going to buy is a new PC, because mine's getting a bit long in the tooth.
Oh, that's a big old upgrade, isn't it, for a gamer these days? Goodness.
Yeah. I only get. I'm not chasing like millions of frames at 4K, so I'm not. It's not going to be that much expensive. But I just want something that's going to run Unreal for it with a bit of decency, because my present PC is struggling.
Now, here's a question for you then. So on that tip, what would you do with the old computer? What happens to the old ones? Does it go to like a graveyard? What happens?
Goes to my son.
Ah, right. So it's like a hand-me-down kind of thing. I wasn't sure if you use the components in that and sort of,
No, I mean, it's perfectly fine, and it'll be perfectly fine for what he needs it for. It's just running game engines is struggling.
Well, he'd be surfing the web for, teenage delights. So, that's all he needs for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's perfectly capable of that sort of thing. It comes with a spit guard and everything.
Ew. Screen shield. Yeah, it's got a waterproof mouse.
Yeah. I didn't think this was water cooled. Many years ago when I ran a mini repair business for PCs when I was in between jobs, and I just set up my own little repair, the PC Medic, and I could tell you stories that would turn your hair whiter. So to repairing PCs for a living is at that particular time, I kid you not, it's a window into people's souls.
Well, you're either not charging OAPs because you're terrified that you think I can't charge you for that because it just wasn't plugged into the wall properly. That it isn't working. It won't be because you haven't got it plugged in, and you've also got it on the same extension as your Stena stairlift, which seems very dangerous to me. That's genuinely true. That was once. Or I used to be able to walk into houses and you could smell the burnt out PSUs, and you're like, you need a new PSU because it's burnt out. And then you go into their room where they keep it, or the shelf where they've carefully positioned the computer, and where there's no heat place for the heat to escape. So you've trapped it in like a greenhouse, and so you get a lot of that. Worst case scenario, you get and this isn't a slight on anybody, any particular anything. But there was a middle-aged women who were, this is pre-OnlyFans, but they were obviously entertaining male friends, and the horrors of their keyboards and the stuff that was in them. I don't even want to think about it. I'm getting PTSD thinking about that. So no, nightmare. That is a living nightmare. Do you know? I'll tell you one thing. There was one instance, I won't obviously go into details, but there was a semi-deflated balloon in a saucer of water, like a mini bowl of water in this PC room. And I was thinking, what on earth would that be for? And then it occurred to me sometime later that was to sort of for extra sound effects when they were on the kind of chat. So it would, and I'll leave the rest to your imagination. And that grossed me up to the point I was like, So, the horrors. Let's move on quickly. David Hearn Writer asks, isn't it time you reviewed Mercenary, the Second City? Maybe you'll love it. Be everything you wanted in the first one, or not. He's going with not. And I'm going to agree with him. Yeah, is it exactly like the first game?
I think it's red instead of green.
Oh, okay. Well, then no.
But you should know as mayor. It's essentially, it's just another city. It's the same thing, but just I think they just rejigged the city.
I'm not mayor of the world of Mercenary. I was mayor of one city.
You're mayor of Targ, yeah.
Exactly. There's another mayor of that city, and we don't like them. So we don't talk about the second city and their devilish ways. With their
I don't even know what the second city is called.
With their rumble seats and then all of that crazy things that they do.
Yeah. But no, I don't think we don't have any. Mercenary, the second city.
No, I've looked at it.
We're not going to.
It's like, no, looked at it and
We looked at it and we could look right through it. That's the problem.
Vector-based shenanigans. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had enough of them. Andy Marsh asks, when consoles finally took over from the 8 and 16-bit micros, what were the repercussions for the bedroom coders? Good Lord, don't know. They either moved over or they got left behind, I guess.
Well, the production of games fundamentally changed at that point. So the publishers, the games became your big console providers. They had particular rules about what could or couldn't be published. And the games went from being somebody in their bedroom could code them because what could you develop them on? How could you test them? You couldn't. So inevitably, they ended up working for developer companies that worked for the publishers. And it's really what started the birth of the developing teams, which then went on to become the bigger teams in like this, the sort of the later Nintendo. So people like Rare, although Rare was made up of complete coders from university, from what I've saw.
Oh yeah, Rare was thingy, wasn't it? Rare was Ultimate, wasn't it? And they basically tore apart the NES and tried to figured out how to program for it, didn't they? And make games for it.
Yeah, and so I'm guessing that's what they just teamed up. But in the individual bedroom coders formed companies. So a good classic example of that is Sensible. Sensible went to become Sensible on the Amiga. They then got a bit bigger, and then they got more people involved, and then they made games for. I'm thinking did they make games for the?
I'm sure the Mega Drive. I think the Mega Drive had Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder and stuff, did it?
Exactly. I would imagine it did. But it's another good version, another good organisation or company to think of is the Bitmap Brothers in that respect, because of course they did release their games that were on the Amiga. They went to the Mega Drive. Mm-hmm. But from what I've read and from what I've spoken to about that, it's not considered a great time for the bedroom programmers because many of them just disbanded off after the Amiga. They were like, well, what's the point? I can't test this on anything. And it kind of locked a lot of people out unless you were willing to work for Nintendo indirectly or Sega indirectly. And some people could code those things and some people couldn't. And I guess that's just kind of the way it went. And it kind of killed off your, well, it did kill it off because the C64 and all these still have people that program with them now. But I mean, in terms of financial reward and the business that goes with it, well, the business was simply evolving. It was going from a bedroom business to being a global enterprise, a much bigger one. And so it was inevitable that was going to happen at some point. Yeah,
and I think one of the interesting things we've seen with the podcast, and obviously charting all the C64 games, when you come across characters like Gavin Rayburn, who went on to work on be the CEO at Playground Games, who did Forza games, Forza Horizon games, and things like that. Now working on they're doing Fable and stuff. I think he's left though. But so he started on those sort of Codemasters £2 games, and then worked all the way through. So there's people like him. There's the guys who went on to form DMA. We've seen games from them on the C64, aren't we? And they went obviously on to do Grand Theft Auto. So there were some success stories of people who worked through. With Nick Jones, I think, is another one that I think he's still working in the industry. I think off the top of my head. So there are these sort of success stories, but I think the impact was that if you weren't in a place where these studios were, then you very much didn't have much of an avenue for your work to get out there anymore. I suppose maybe some of them went onto PC.
No doubt,
because the PC obviously was coming through in the 90s as well with things like that. But the PC was, even then, the PC market was becoming more homogenized with, especially from the States with, id Software, Bethesda, people like that sort of ruling the roost, I guess, but don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I suppose really it sort of goes in weird circles really, because at a certain point the production of the games was expensive because mass production of anything was expensive. And when you're relying on proper media, cartridges, CDs and things like that, you need distribution and you need duplication, and there's a whole expense of marketing around that. Then when digital distribution started to become a thing, the independents came back because there was a way of them being able to get their games out, and mobile kind of facilitated a great deal of that. And that's then gone in circle. And those companies have sort of taken on bigger projects. The games get more popular. There's an entire strand, and your Steams have really come along and democratized the entirety of that to a degree. And so has the game engines that can allow for that. So you've got that kind of a democratization. And then weirdly, what I've read recently is that the big publishers are now snapping up a lot of these smaller publishers and then just kind of killing them off, so that the only people that are left to produce these things are the big companies. And I don't quite understand the logic of that, but it just seems that they seem to be shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. And all I've read is that there's been a massive glut of games coming out for the bigger systems because they require so many people, so much expertise, so much dollar, that there's not many coming out. And meanwhile, your independents can afford to sort of release things that are a bit more quirky, not necessarily as graphically intense. And those games are proving to be massively more successful when they are successful. And I suppose a real key one of those would be something like, and you have to forgive my ignorance because I don't really know what it is. I never really played it, but something like Minecraft, I imagine, where Minecraft was produced by somebody independent, went massive. Microsoft bought that, didn't they? So, and I imagine there's quite a bit of that going on at the moment. And so,
yeah. And the interesting thing to see about obviously bedroom coders is like it's what I see from my students these days, because there was the students that are. A lot of the games I see being produced by my students now, and I see this across multiple universities when I see their work as working as external examiner and places like that. There's a real harking back for PS1 N64 style visuals, because there's loads of games on Steam and things like that hark back to these kind of styles of games, because they're looking to make it in small teams. And even though something like Unreal does a lot of the heavy grunt and heavy lifting, they just like these kind of quirky offbeat.
Yep.
They don't want to do photorealism. I find that quite heartening, really, because it's like the chase for photorealism is only one thing. And games, as we've seen over years, sort of thing, can be many things. And so that kind of bedroom coder ethos, it's kind of still there, and we see it in these smaller teams, and I certainly see it in some of my students, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they iterate over this. I mean, they that new blood, those fresh ideas, those fresh perspectives, that's the most refreshing thing about the games industry, because the stagnation of those games titles at the top, you can see it all the time. They've just been churning out. One particular organization or company produces a game that has a certain type of success, and then you just see dozens and dozens of very expensive reproductions of that. And I can think of that, Assassin's Creed type game. And then the most recent version of something like that, probably the recent game I played actually last on the PS, whatever it was the Ghost of Tsushima, which was kind of just another version of that, of Assassin's Creed and that kind of game where you've got a single character just sort of slugging it out, in endless battles and stuff. And it was pretty to look at, but it was no, there was nothing great about the game design. It wasn't massively original. Its setting was nice and the fidelity of the graphics, but are the ideas drying up? Because it just seems that there doesn't seem to me to be a lot of new ideas. They're all in the indie bit from your kids and the guys that you're teaching. That's where the exciting stuff comes from, if you ask me.
It is.
And I don't play any of them anyway, so what does it matter to me? As long as I get an egg at Easter, it's all good.
True. David Writer asks, at the end of the podcast, are you going to have a Bread Bin Awards podcast? Not by year, the best of all time for each category, and your candidates are chosen for each year's winner. Already planned.
Yep.
Already planned. Yeah, we'll be doing that. So we've got, all the years we'll have all the winners put into and they'll have a grand fight out. We'll have the best game for the C64 in our opinion of all the previous year's winners.
It's going to be tough.
That's going to be massively tough, but it's going to be a fun episode, that one. But that is planned. Don't worry.
Yep, we're doing it.
Yep. Mubat asks, what was the first issue of Zapped 64 that you remember reading? I think mine was 4 or 5. Issue 4 or 5. I think Gary had it. I think it was Gary. I think he had an issue. I think it was Gary. It was someone had an issue, and there was not many people who I was hanging around with that had it, so it was either him or another friend, but I'm pretty sure it was Gary, and it was 4 or 5, I think. I think it was the one with Fourth Protocol in.
So I was a Commodore user reader before I was a Zap 64.
Well, I think everyone was, because it was out well before Zap, wasn't it? So
I just didn't. That was the one that I quite liked. I think because it had listings in, and I was quite interested in that at the time when I was doing it, but never typed any in successfully. It never worked. But the first Zap, I think it was quite late to the party with Zap, so it might have been around that Gauntlet cover, or maybe just before then, or the one with not actually before the Last Ninja one. But I remember having one of those cover tapes, so it must have been around then. But the one I remember is the Gauntlet one, because I remember the axe on the cover, but I don't know which one came first. I couldn't tell you that.
Right.
In fact, prior to that, I remember seeing them, but the people I knew at school, there was only one person that had a C64 at that particular time. The rest were all Spectrum owners, so they all had Crash. So I saw more Crashes than I did Zaps.
Yeah, I think the first one I remember, the first one I bought was the Paradroid issue. So I think I was reading them at Gary's for a couple of months. I'm pretty sure it was Gary who got it. He'll remind me and go, you don't know, I never had it. And I'll be like, oh, it was somebody, but someone's house. And I was reading them. And then I think it was because I was reading the diary. And then when Paradroid came out, the review of that was the issue I bought first. I'm pretty sure. But, it's 40 years ago. The mind plays tricks. I think we've already answered this, but Graham, Andy Marsh asks, when did you check out playing computer games? We know you don't play modern games. What was the last game you played before you decided to stop? Explain yourself, man.
Okay. So I actually took a massive break from gaming before. then I kind of got back into it. And then, so the last 2 games I played from start to finish was The Last of Us Part 2 and then Ghost of Tsushima. The Last of Us Part 2, I committed to playing that when I first played The Last of Us, and I knew there'd be a sequel. Because I think it's one of the greatest video games ever created. And so as an experience, the second one less so, but the first one just hands down, it blew me away and everybody at the time. And then the Ghost of Tsushima, just because I always wanted there to be a decent Japanese game based in sort of feudal Japan of a sort, that was kind of done in that way, as I described earlier. I've always thought that was just missing. There was all these other variations, but nobody had actually done that finally. And I know there's been other samurai games, but not all of them were necessarily the kind of games I wanted to play. So I just wanted to sort of try that out, as much as it was massively expansive. And I've never written so many haikus in my life. Now, so questions there. So what did I check out of playing computer games? I checked out, firstly, for one reason, is a technical one, that I had an Xbox One, I've still got it, and I've got a PS4, and I couldn't be up until I got a Nintendo Switch, and that was really just because I was going on an airplane and I wanted something to do. But the consoles at that point, I didn't have very high-speed internet at the house I was in, and so whenever I got a game or anything, it needed an update, and the updates were so epically massive that it actually kind of killed off my enjoyment. Then I also just, I didn't want to spend the time on the games that I was doing. I had a family. I had a wife, a new wife. And I just didn't want to be, I couldn't commit to just playing all the video games in the same way. And I found that my ability to get back into games after taking any kind of break was completely and utterly done. So if I played a game sort of like the most recent God of War, if I played that and then took a break from it, when I went back, I was just cack-handed and crap. And then I started to realize that I couldn't read the subtitles on the text, or I couldn't. My eyesight and my hand-eye coordination, just all the things happen to you when you hit sort of 50. It just started working against me, and I just kind of lost my enjoyment in the games. And also, I was then being convincingly beaten in everything by my teenagers, who were by that point so great at games that it was pointless me even operating them. And I actually started to enjoy them more vicariously through them, because I was able to sort of, I didn't get the enjoyment from it that I once did. The updates kind of killed it. I was kind of getting bored. I tried to get into games like some of the more recent games, not now, but then I'm going back to, pre-COVID, really. So quite a few years, really. And I just couldn't get into them. I found that just endless downloads. I couldn't do it. So I'd committed to The Last of Us Part 2, did that, and I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was, it reminded me of why I kind of wanted to step out of it. And so I did, and I only really play games for this podcast and the C64 ones, and that's because they don't take, I don't have to switch them on and wait for 2 days because it needs a 50 gig update, which is kind of what was happening. And I don't think that the companies that make those updates ever really understand how disruptive it is to buy a game, put it in, and it tell you that it needs to do an update. And when you've only got a very low speed internet connection or a very low bandwidth, either in a country at this point, and there wasn't any kind of fiber optic or anything like that, and so an update could literally take 3 days to complete, and that's if it wasn't disrupted. And there's other people on that internet connection. I was just like, I can't do it. By the time it had updated, I'd lost my interest in it. So
no, that's a fair point. And just to, I mean, I don't want to sound like an old man shouting at clouds, but I completely agree with the upgrades, the updates. It's just ridiculous. I have because the new Call of Duty is on Game Pass, so I had that, and I've got the multiplayer. I've got it on disc on the Xbox Series X because my son, when he comes around, he likes to play it. I'm like, fine, I'll leave it on there. It just a multiplayer version of it with the maps and everything, I think takes up 160 gig.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
On my thing. It had an update the other week. It's had 2 updates in the past couple of months. Each of them were bigger than 160 gig. 174 gig one of them was, just for an update. I was like, what are you updating? That's more than the game.
No,
that's not an update.
It's just ridiculous.
So, imagine if you were trying to download 170 odd gig on your old internet. Even me, I've got a fairly fast one. It takes a day.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it now. And then also, I suppose the other nail in the coffin really was not just about the updates, but I found that I have really good memories of certain games and game experiences. So Last of Us, I've already said, but the BioShock series of games are literally, for me, some of the greatest designed and looking games that has ever been. Half-Life 2 and all the series of those, and just there's some game of Halo and things like that. Some of those experiences of those games I hold with such high regard in my memory that I found that the sequels that were coming out for some of these and some of the variations, they were just annoying me that they were just not as good as those games on the Xbox 360. Most of those really. Mm-hmm. And I had such really fond memories of those experiences that I found that I didn't want any of those to be kind of ruined by having a crap experience and then another one and another one. So I just thought, you know what? I'll settle for the experiences I've had because, I can remember playing Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 on the 360 with you and a couple of other people and having such a great time that I can't imagine then getting another variation of a modern game and just not enjoying it. I like the memories I've got and I'm going to keep those. And the C64 podcast we're doing is killing plenty of them off anyway. So.
Yeah, true. The multiplayer games, I think, are certainly, you were at a certain time and place in your life when they can hit and they can hit right. I had great times playing Halo back then, but I watch my son. My son plays. He doesn't play single player offline games. It's all online. So it's Rainbow Six Siege, it's Rocket League, it's Fortnite.
Yeah, same with my lad. Yeah,
stuff with Roblox. That's all they do, and so he's just experiencing that. So they're not for me. My gaming these days is more. Things like weird things like Blueprints or Return to the Obra Dinn, which I just played recently. I'm just playing Outer Wilds as well. So I like kind of experiences which are a bit. I like first person shooters. If I want a first person shooter, I've just gone back and played through all the Halo games again because I know what to expect and they're great. And a lot of the games I start, I don't get very far into them because it's like I've done this. This is just doing it with nicer walls.
Yeah, exactly.
The graphics look better, but so anyway.
And the one thing I'll say, my final thought is the one thing I do miss actually is the soundtracks for games were always amazing, and they were just getting better and better and better and better and better. So some of the music in the games, like I remember listening to the soundtrack for Gears of War 2 and obviously the Halo series. There's just some amazing music in those games, and it gets a little bit lost in the marketing brouhaha sometimes. But some of the music in them is just absolutely off the chart brilliant. So, and some of those experiences because of that, Dear Esther and things like that, everyone's gone to the Rapture. Some of those unusual, I don't even call them games, narrative explorations, really.
Yeah, games, walking sims.
But great music in those as well. I kind of miss the music in the games a little bit, I have to say.
Cool. Nick James asks, is there anything like a new feature or say game scoring system you regret not introducing into the podcast, but didn't think of it until it was too late? I don't think so.
We never really did. Not really, because we sort of toyed with the idea of doing the percentages, but we weren't basing it on Zap as a magazine and copying their review styles. We were just using the lists of games they looked at as the basis. So we didn't want to mirror their style
scoring system.
Scoring, and also then to put in a scoring system means we weren't really thinking about the games that way. We wanted to play them. We weren't mimicking Zap. We were just coming at them a little bit fresher, and we did originally start to put in the games that we recommend, and we kind of dipped in and out of that a little bit, but it became a lost cause at certain points. So
we're supposed I think that because I think we wanted to sort of recommend a game each episode, sort of saying something you should go play, and so it's like I can't recommend anything. Don't play any of these. Exactly. and then that's where we play them so you don't have to always came from, and because it was like so I don't think so. No, I think there was we had what we wanted to do, and I think the way we do it has evolved over time into, and I think I'm satisfied and quite happy with where it is. I don't think there's anything that I thought, I wish we'd included that. I don't think so. David Hearn, more questions. I know that's up to pass. That's me. Is a soccer fan. I'm wondering if Azusha, that's you, isn't. But wondering if that's changed since having to play so many soccer games on the C64. I'm going to hazard a guess that the soccer games on the C64 have not made you a football fan.
No.
Anyway, if anything, they've put you off it more, I reckon.
No, I mean, the only football game I ever really liked was Sensible on the Amiga. And that was only really when I was playing it with you or with Gary, or, it was a bit of a laugh. I'm not a football fan at all. I mean, soccer, football, we'll call it what
really not. He really isn't.
I'm not into it. I've never watched it in my life. I've been to a football ground once, and I can't really say I enjoyed it once, and all I did was hurt my foot. So
it's left you with a state of ennui. It's not something you can see catching on.
No,
trying it once.
For reasons that can never be explained, I was roped into being in a charity football match at Grimsby's ground with the rest of the staff and teachers that were at the college at the time. So I was part of the media team because I was teaching media at the time. Why they asked me to be in this team is a mystery to me. I just spent what felt like forever getting really painful feet and being shouted at with commands that I had no understanding of what it meant. So when someone was shouting 1, 2, other than me thinking, are we playing in a band? What do you mean? Or
3,
man
4?
on, shouting man on at me. Well, what are you talking about? I don't know what that means.
It means you've got someone coming in close to tackle you.
Yeah,
man on.
Does it?
Man on.
No, it doesn't mean anything to anybody that doesn't know what that means.
I know. It's funny.
So no, and we didn't win. Surprise, surprise.
No. I can honestly say that he's not a football fan. He's really not. No. In the entirety of our time together, this is like 30 odd years, he's never liked football. Never.
Nope.
And he also asked, this many episodes in, what's your favourite thing about doing the podcast? Let's play the games. No.
It's having a laugh with me mate of 30 plus years every week. What's not to love about that? Pretty much.
I think that's my answer as well, if I'm genuinely honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love doing that. It's one of my longest and time served friends. We have nothing but laughs doing this, and it's worth the pain of some of those crappy games just for the laughs. Because even though we're crap, I know I'm going to be sharing that crapness with an old mate who is going to share the crapness with me, and that's the fun of it for me. It really is. I love it. I love it for that reason.
Yeah, crapness shared is crapness divided. I don't know.
And plus, let's not forget, we have aligned senses of humour that we've had for as long as I can remember. And that it's so natural to us that we probably don't, that other people probably think that. But when we're laughing and joking, and if we're sometimes we either elaborate or we dive into a crazy thing and then we'll iterate over that in the terms of podcast. We've done that since we've known each other. That's not something that we do just for the podcast. That is our friendship and has been for years. So if we go off on a tangent, I know that if I go off on a tangent, I know that Adrian will join in that tangent, and he would say the same about me, I don't doubt.
Yep, absolutely. And finally, as you both code, if you coded a game for the bread bin, what would it be about? We've had something similar before. I don't know. I don't know how I made a podcast, but I don't know. What would you do? I think a shoot 'em up or a platformer. I think the thing is, what we've seen is what the platform is good at.
Yeah.
Over time. So I would do one of those and something. Do it right.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'd do. I'd like, if I could have the ability in the graphics, I'd like to think I'd do a game like Yasagi Yojimbo with really just fun characters and just walking along, hacking or slashing with a samurai sword, that kind of thing. Do it right. Do it right. Not like that crappy Ninja Rabbits. Do it right. Or a single screen puzzler, a bit like our friend, the Million Molly chap. What's his name?
Carlton.
Why was I going to call him Colt Seavers then? I don't know. The name that popped in me. That's not him.
But he has, he's had ladies plenty as far as what I've heard and stuff. And he's usually leaving them on the line though. Hey.
He might fall from a tall building. Yeah. He's the unknown coder who made Eastwood such a star. Random. But yes, I don't know why I thought of that. But yeah, the Million Molly, that kind of game, because Million Molly's brilliant, and I'd love to have been able to make something like that.
Yeah, good puzzle. I'm terrible at puzzle levels, but yeah. ALH2 Retro asks, which games, C64 or otherwise, do you love that everyone else seems to hate? And which games do you hate, which everyone else seems to love?
That's an interesting question, that. Which C64 games do I love? Everyone seems to hate. The tricky thing there is that nobody ever seems to hate the games on the C64. They all just seem to have these retro spectacles that they look back and go, every game was brilliant. And we've proven with tests that they really weren't. That is not true.
Really not.
But 95% were utter shit.
All right, I'll tell you what then. Not everyone, but let's flip it for me and you. Because I think one for me that I love, that I know you don't rate, and it would be the Eidolon.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you do like the... I mean, I get the tech, but I was never into the game.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think for me, would be Maniac Mansion or something, or Zack McCracken.
Yeah, those early point-and-click adventures, yeah. I'd say that. So maybe that's... So, yeah, that's probably the easy way of doing it. Games that I hate that everyone else seems to love. Mercenary.
Anything vector-based.
Elite Mercenary, yeah. And games that I love that everyone seems to hate. I don't know that there's. I mean, I don't know. I always quite had a bit of a soft spot for Fist 2, but it's only because I bought it. I think back in the day, and at that time, everyone was hating on that game, and I quite liked it, and they kind of tried to almost turned it. And then games that I think also a game that I love that everyone, I don't know, that seem to hate. I don't know. I didn't play a lot of games like that.
No.
I think a game that actually I've come to dislike that everyone does seem to love is some of them are just because they're soundtracks. So things like Delta and things like that. I used to think it was great, but now I've come to really dislike Delta as a game, although the music's good. But everyone
it's a memory test, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas the other games that are better, Amalite, for example,
and also as well, Delta suffers from the fact that if you don't get the speed up power ups, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. So
you can't get past those walls that come up and down, and that's just bad design.
Yeah,
and you see that now when you look back at it. So yeah,
it also says C64 or otherwise. So other games that I love that everyone seems to hate. That's a tricky one.
I don't know, because I've got games that I enjoyed, like on the Xbox and PS2 and stuff, that I know people rate as really bad games. So, like the Alias game, I played that on the Xbox and I had quite a good time with that. But I can't imagine that anybody would particularly like that. There's probably quite a few. Turok. I quite like Turok on the Xbox, and I know it genuinely it's not a very good game. But I had quite a good time with it at the time. Right time, right place, I think. But yeah, things like that.
I've never liked any of those Splinter Cell games. I know people really like them, but I've always thought they were just... Because I'm crap at those sneaking around games. I really am crap at them. I mean, it's no accident. I'm not good at them. And that does put me off playing it. Everyone raves about how great they are, and I'm just like, it's not that good, but it probably is.
There's the thing in there about those games. It's like it's the thing that Metal Gear Solid 2 did really well, sort of thing, because the Splinter Cell games are supposed to be about Sam Fisher. Sam Fisher is this amazing stealthy spy, and he always is in the cutscenes. He's like crawling through vents and doing amazing stuff and everything like that. And then you get him you get control of him, and he's running up walls, bouncing off stuff, standing up when he should be crouching down. It's just rubbish. He's not a super spy when he's in my hands of controls, and I always find that that's kind of funny. But I get what you're saying, because I'm just dreadful. I'm not very good at those games, and I always end up shooting everyone, which I don't think is the point of them.
No, I do the same. I tell you that what's that game? Is that the one where you're walking around being the assassin? What's it called? Hitman. That was just it was a sea of shambles for me. It was the worst Hitman.
But that is the best. That is the best thing about Hitman, though. That's a brilliant thing. That's one of the, you can do that in Hitman. Hitman's built for that. The Splinter Cell game's not so
continuously much. I never was successful in that game particularly. I was just really crap. Always getting caught. Always. Even if I dressed as a chef, it'd be like it's him. Like, how do you know it's me?
Because you're bald and got a barcode on the back of your head, and your chef's not covering it. That's
and you
probably
can't
why.
you can't cook for shit. Get out.
And then shoot him in the head and carry on. Put him in a freezer. Anyway, Mubar asks, this is probably one more for you, I think. I'd love to hear more about your C64 scene shenanigans. S Express, yeah? Did you ever trek to any scene parties? Did you ever meet any of the heavy-hitting scenesters? Any experience with massive swap meets back in the day, or were your trades all via brown envelopes? Did you tend to get your swapped floppies wrapped in cardboard and plastic cases? Did either of you ever do your own cracks, or were you just demo focused?
So there's a lot of questions to unpack. There's a lot of questions to unpack. Yeah. So firstly, yes, it was S Express. And you can go on CDSB, is it? And you can find S Express. Yeah. CSDB, and you can find S Express. You'll see me in there. I was known back then as Grez, GREZZ, of S Express, and Gary was in there as Spud. And you can go and find us, and AD's even in there as AD of ARG, which is a long explanation for that. But we were fundamentally S Express, which was actually created by Gary. He created that. He'd been a part of the scene longer than me at that time, and he was involved in all sorts of groups, most of which had really dubious names. That's the Gremlins or the Big Boob Brothers, probably, or something weird like that. He was well obsessed with stuff like that.
Still is.
But anyway, eventually they'd gone from being the Gremlins to something else. And Gary had established himself as quite the trader with a lot of the big scene hitters at the time, including big groups like Pulsar and Ikari, places like that. So he had a lot of contacts in his contact book. And then obviously I joined with Storm because they couldn't, I mean, I don't mean any disrespect, but Gary and the NMI was a chap called Mark Fisher, who we were friends with at the time, couldn't code for shit. And they had an Irish guy in the group at the time called Paddy, who did do a little bit of coding. And so they'd sort of created some very basic looking demos using a few demo tools at the time. And they weren't terrible products or anything like that. They were kind of using demo makers. And then Storm and I stepped in. Storm is a friend Joe at the time from school. And they were a savant programmer and were just incredibly talented. I've never known anybody to this day who could code the way that that Joe could, Storm could. And they started coding for the BBC at school and caused a right stink when they created a disk virus for that. And so they were just talented, very talented. And then I got to know them in computer club and all sorts of geeky stuff at school. And they then decided to start to code C64 because they just found it fascinating. The very first time that Joe came around to my house, coded in BASIC a program that solved simultaneous equations just while I was having dinner. And that was in BASIC. They were just talented like that. And honestly, it's quite remarkable to think about it. Anyway, so we all joined, and then we were principally making demos and trading via brown packages at the time and brown envelopes of discs. I got a disk drive, so weren't afraid to use it. Did we ever trek to any scene parties? I didn't personally, other than we went to the computer shows in London. I can't speak for if Gary ever went to any. I don't think so, but you could correct me on that, but I don't think so. But we did have our own party once where we invited all the members of S Express to my house. And all that really happened from that was that Gary got incredibly drunk by mixing loads of alcohol into one bottle and just drinking that. Storm ended up thrown up all over the kitchen table. Mark ended up stealing someone's moped and driving around the garden in circles on it. And it all went a bit wrong, has to be said. So anyway, did we ever meet any heavy hitting scenesters? Yes, at those various events we went to in London, we saw quite a lot of the guys, mainly from what was a group called Sub-Zero, which was ex-Pulsar guys. And some of those guys are still sort of working and doing stuff to this day. But we met a load of those guys. There was a guy called Jog. And there was just a few of them. They're all about our age. So they're all about 16, 17-year-olds. So it was good fun to be around those guys. We did trade a lot. But at the end, I had over 60, 70 contacts across the entire world. I was getting on average about 30 discs a day, non-stop. And I literally couldn't cope with the amount of stamps I had to try and buy in order to send these things back. It got expensive. And trying to explain what was going on to my parents at the time was very difficult. The discs were always wrapped in the little slip cases that discs came with. And more often than not, the big kudos at the time was if you designed the disc cases yourself. Not only was our friend Storm a incredible coder, he was also a really talented artist. And so he drew loads of Hellraiser images on one of them, but we had a series of them because our tagline was, "We'll tear your wares apart." Tacky, I know, but that's what
I
it was.
remember that.
So we got quite Hellraiser inspired, and so we did loads of Hellraiser disc sleeves, which were genuinely brilliant, and we distributed them. And so there's people out there probably still got those. Did we do our own cracks? Yeah, we cracked loads of games. NMI and Yatterin was part of the gang, as well as, believe it or not, Flash. Now, Flash was a member of S Express. Flash is the guy that created Warhawk on the C64.
Yeah.
So he was a member of our demo group, and he did code some demo parts for Cyanide 2, which you can go and look at, including a game part. He was also a really talented musician, did loads of C64 music. Really cool guy, Flash. Michael Ware is his name. He's a really, really, really sound guy. Still in the scene to this day, coding games and all sorts of stuff. Really cool guy. Really, really, really friendly guy. And so, yeah, we did a lot of that. And he did a lot of cracks, under the guise of the Yatterin. I think he did it with NMI. We lived out of Norwich. We did a load in Grimsby where we were based, but we were actually mainly focused on demos because cracking games was such a time-consuming exercise and so so much pain. And you needed to get hold of the originals, and that was actually very difficult to do because most of the games I got were already cracked, and there was no credit in cracking someone else's crack. That was like, you just didn't do that because that's considered super tacky and stuff like that. So where we got them, we did, but other than that, so that's the brief sort of tour of the scene. We did that for quite a while, best part of a year and a half, which is a long time to be trading discs on a daily basis. And I think Gary gave up with it in the end because he just couldn't be arsed with it, because it does take over your life. It really does. And you don't get to play any of these games. You watch a few of the demos, and then I upgraded to the Amiga anyway, and I kind of did Amiga for a bit and then just tuned out a bit altogether. So there you go.
Yeah. Did you say his name was Yattering?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
was that
NMI was also in a group called the Yatterin. So,
right.
But he was part of S Express. So,
all right, okay. I just wondered if that was from Yattering and Jack, the Clive Barker story.
Yeah, it probably is. It probably is something to do with that. Because NMI because there was a big cracking scene in Norwich, strangely enough, but there really was. And so he was getting a lot of really early releases and cracking them. And then every now and again, he'd throw an S Express one out, but he would also mainly do them through Yatterin. I think he liked to keep his S Express stuff swaps and demos. But I only met NMI once. Really, really nice guy, but I only ever met him at the demo party that we had. And I don't remember much about him after 11 o'clock because I was completely mortal, so I couldn't tell you what he was like, really.
And on that note, sounds about right. We're going to take a quick break, I think. We're just going to go away for a quick moment just to sort of wet our whistles and come back and go for about an hour now. We've still got loads of questions to answer, so please do stick with us. We'll be back after this very short break. And we're back. More questions, loads more questions. Let's crack into them. David Hearn, once again, on the question. He says, if you had to have a gunfight, which opponent would you pick out of Avon, Savalan, or Sulin? Look, I'm just going to... What is this? It's just another language.
It's Blake 7.
It's Blake 7.
And that's Servalan. Not
Servalan. Savalan. I don't know.
Sulin. Servalan and Sulin.
They're just made up words written down.
So they're characters from Blake 7. So Avon was the crew member out of Blake's crew.
Yeah.
Servalan was the big bad lady. And Sulin, I think, was one of the other one of these.
Now, I was actually wondering whether he was talking about like a gunfight, like out of beauty products. I thought there might have been beauty product producers. So Avon, obviously you've got Avon. I thought Servalan might have been one. Sulin might have been one. It's like, who are you going to have a fight with?
No, that David Hearn would be into that, but maybe we've got it wrong.
Maybe we have got it wrong. But you can choose.
I would pick Avon out of those because Avon was the cool kind of twisted character because he's the coolest character in it. And after Blake disappeared, he's the only character that was really interesting. He was always kind of, you never really knew where you stood with Avon. He was good bad. Was he a bad guy? Was he a good guy? You never really know.
Would you want a gunfight with him?
Yeah, because it'd be fun. He should probably shoot me, but I think he probably wouldn't, and we'd end up being really good friends.
Absolutely. Played a few games of International Karate Plus.
Yeah.
Lee Dove asked the question for both of us. For the upcoming Issues podcast, I don't know when this was, it would go to look at the two previously unreviewed Ubisoft titles that appear in the compilation Six Appeal. See what they did there. Games. These are games Twin World and Pick and Pile. I think we've had the crap for Twin World. It was that stupid leprechaun thing. We might put these into a games that Zapped forgot. They may pop up.
Yeah, I was thinking like a pick of the packs kind of thing, something, because there is quite a lot of these packs that have the odd games in there. So we maybe do a pick of the packs and sort of pick a few out from the various different multi-pack, Six Appeal, crappy ones, and see what crap's in there. We've already found a couple that got re-released. That should never have been released. So
what was there? We had Great Girianos. We've had that Durell one.
What was the race? Was the driving? Hard driving? Was that one? It was.
Hard driving. Yeah, just
goodness, awful.
Yeah. Oh, awful. David Hearn asks, would you consider a Patreon revisit special Zapped to the Past again to re-review games nominated by patrons, if there's enough interest? I think the depth of reviews, including the reading of instructions, is very neat now and would go down a treat for some of the gems from 85 and 86. It's not like we'd ask you to re-review your least favourite again. More Chippy T or later Dizzo 2.0 ahead. Never say no, is what I say.
No, I think there's mileage in that. I think because we've obviously developed the format over time, and we probably did give lip service to some games that perhaps deserved a little bit more depth. But we'll maybe look at that as we come towards the end of what we've got to do, right? So.
I do think though that if we had done as in-depth reviews back then as we do now, the podcast would have been days long.
Yeah, true. It would have been. We would have had to split them into like months and months
because like some of them were like we did 14 games I think at one point in one episode, and if you're talking about like we fit 2 in an hour, these episodes would have just gone on for with no way we could have done it, no way. But it might be interesting to go look back and look at some of the classics, but we'll see. Andy Marsh says, now that you've played all those games, we don't have to, you've effectively conducted a very thorough primary research project. Do you feel the need to fire up your filmmaking passions again and put this project onto the silver screen? Maybe you have no choice but to make a documentary about gaming on the C64.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a controversial documentary? It would be quite funny, though.
Yeah, I don't think we'd get many people agreeing to be interviewed on it.
No, we'd have to just pretend to be them. We could call it From Bedrooms to Bastards.
You could. Yeah. Oceans of brown envelopes.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be something like that. But no, I don't know, because everyone seems to want to make documentaries about retro games these days. They seem to be popping up like toast. I have no desire to make a documentary, although it would be fun to, I think we would probably be considered experts at this now. So if there's any documentary makers out there that want an insight into what we've experienced, which is, well over 1,500 games of the C64 now, with very real opinions on them that you won't like, we can happily do that.
Yeah, and the only other thing and this is something that I think we've just kind of chatted about, perhaps, maybe, possibly, is that it would be nice to put this into writing. We have a lot of written commentary about these games, so maybe a book or a series of books might be a nicer way to sort of round this up towards the end. But afterwards, but that would be way afterwards, and we'd have to sort of think about the format and everything. But
maybe kickstart a book of the Zapped to the Past, the book, the Lost Scripts.
Yeah, something like that. So maybe that's the direction. But we both have media degree backgrounds. We both worked in media in various forms. We could probably do it, but I've got no passion to make a documentary on this. I don't know what you'll actually say in terms of that. I think
I'd get as far as the opening credits, and I'd be like, so little time. Computers are smashed. We'd have to do things inoperative,
and we'd have to render the opening credits on deluxe paint.
For genuine authenticity, we would. We would spin them around. I've still got deluxe paint. We could do that.
We could do that.
In fact, you know what? I'll tell you what I've still got. By the way, I meant to tell you. I found on my Amiga. I've still got that Scala software as well.
Oh, the Overjet. Oh no, that was
the title credits software.
Oh, it's title credits. Yeah.
I've still got Scala. Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah. Credited all our films that didn't it?
It did,
all of them, pretty much.
Yep.
Kransky asks, I know you've mentioned in reviews quite a few times that the two-player mode would probably be good. So how about a special where you re-review such games after playing them together? I'm thinking Spy vs. Spy, Pit Stop 2, Archon, Racing Destruction Set, BMX Simulator, Bubble Bobble, Whizball, Trailblazer, Swiv, Super Off-Road, IK Plus, and so on and so forth. That vector graphics dogfighting game I've forgotten the name of. There's a reason you've forgotten the name of that. There's a reason everyone's ever forgotten the name of that.
Yeah.
Was it Starion? Might have been Starion. Or was it Top? Like there was also Top Gun. Want Top Gun a split screen vector graphics?
I'm not playing that. I'm not going through that again.
Well, he says it might be fun. I mean, that wouldn't be. But I think that's something we've spoken about doing, haven't we?
I think we should do it. I think that at some point we will do that because it'd be fun to revisit some of those, particularly IK Plus, because we had such a lot playing that back in the day. So
yeah. So there's some good stuff. There is some good stuff there, and there's some good things there.
Good mileage in that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we like our quality. It'd just be interesting how we would translate that to a podcast format. We'd have to think about how to do it. I don't think it'd be much fun just listening to us playing.
No, we'd have to maybe do a live stream or something like that, and maybe look at how we did that, and maybe offer that out, which is something we've talked about. We could do it, but I think it's just
we could do it on Discord,
time and set up. Yeah.
Muba asks, have you met any of the big names of C64 game devs? Any that you still want to meet? Any names that you missed back in the day? Please tell me that Gary Rayburn. Well, Gary Rayburn.
Rayburn.
It's Gavin. I don't know who Gary Rayburn is. Probably his brother, Gary Laneker or something. Has been in touch. He hasn't been in touch now. With the ones we've interviewed. Carlton. So we've spoken to them. We met Sir, to you and me at Zapped.
We did, he was lovely.
Live, didn't we? He was very nice, yeah.
I've met Jeff Minter before now because he challenged me to play one of his games and not have a seizure, which was a challenge. I went to the very first replay in Blackpool when it was the very first one they ever did, and played and beat Archie McLean at IK, which was a real moment, actually, for me.
Oh, well done.
I convincingly beat him as well. In fact, I even shouted, "You're going down, McLean."
That's from
I just got a bit into it. So I played. That was a challenge, though. That was you could challenge him playing. He wasn't really, he played it, obviously, but he was just for fun, really. But I wasn't. Yeah. It was very serious for me. He needed to be beaten, and he was. Bless his socks. But we have met quite a few over the years, especially with, and of course, when we were both teaching, getting any of the coders and any of those people in to talk to the students is always a big deal. And so, I have amazing memories of John Hare coming to talk to students and judging game dev competitions. We obviously had Ben Daglish as well, and Ben was one of my favourite characters of the C64 scene because the guy was wild. We were live streaming a conversation he was having with students till the point where he swore outright, and we had to sort of switch him off the air because it just went completely mad. But a lot of those sceners like that came across, but also
Mike Clark.
Mike Clark came across. He came over a few times, and they did all of this. They did for free, you know.
Jim Bagley as well, was it, wasn't he?
Yeah. Baggers came across us. Yeah, he came across and did a bit of judging as well. But also, then later down the line, latterly, we got we believe it or not, the students at Grimsby had a 2-hour video conference with Gabe Newell at one point. And this is honest to God the truth. The students just emailed him and said, "We want to talk to you. Is there any chance you can talk to us?" And so he must be in my back. Yeah, when? We were like, wow, okay. So we actually did have a 2-hour conversation with Gabe Newell. And then who's the guy that did the Stanley Parable?
William Pugh.
So William Pugh came, and he got a phone call on the day he came to the Grimsby to tell him he was a millionaire, because the Stanley Parable had sold well over 1 million copies, and he found out he was a millionaire while he was stood with our students, and just put his phone down. He said, "I can't. You're not going to believe it." And he's kind of a quirky character because he's very, very. He was a bit like Russell Brand, you know, and of old. And look, I don't, you know,
he looked like Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, he just had a bit of a gothy look, didn't he? Gothy kind of pirate look. Really cool guy, very erratic but cool. But he was very humble about the fact that he'd just become a millionaire while he was stood there from the success of that game, and he was really humble about that, but really funny as well. So yeah, just people like that, all been good.
Yeah, there you go. David Hearn asks, don't you think it's time you treated yourselves to another text adventure?
Oh, the agony of that statement.
Absolutely. This piffling text adventure, I can't even... I can't believe you bring it up.
Can't bear the thoughts of another bear being stranded up a tree for 2 days. Oh, the agony of all.
The parser won't accept no, not at all, never, no, this parser is rubbish.
I know, I typed in touch cloth and it all went wrong.
I was trying to explain to someone at work the other day about the how to solve the puzzles in those Dracula and Frankenstein games, and it's like how to solve the puzzles was typing in wait. You just have to wait. This is stupid. I mean, I think back to that. That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever come across in a video game. How do I do this? Oh, you just wait.
Yeah, and how are you going to know to do that? And you've got to do it 3 or 4 times in some instances as well as wait. There is a bear. God. Wait. The bear is getting closer. Wait.
Absolutely.
The bear's
He's climbing the tree. Just wait. Oh, the bear has got bored and gone away. Oh, okay. Oh. This is boring. Oh, the piffling bear.
Run away. The bear has savaged you and eaten your legs. Oh, if I had waited one more wait period.
Or what was the one where you could, was it Wolfman, where the game started and there was an angry mob outside and you could go out basically without putting your pants on? They angrily killed you for it. Stupid.
Yeah. Or if you went out, you tried to do anything in the wrong order, and they would immediately go, "He's got blood in his pants. He's a werewolf. Kill him."
Yeah.
There was surrounded by people that were really experts at Dusty Bin and 3-2-1 because they just figured out those random clues and assembled it into "He's a wolf man."
Absolutely. Yep. So I don't know. In other words, probably not.
No.
Well, the thing is, though, at this point, as the games get fewer in Zap, they still have an adventure section. I don't know if if those sections, like the strategy section has gone, the adventure section may disappear, and those games may just enter into the main body of the magazine. No. So,
and if they do, then we'll do it.
Then we'll have to look at it. If they don't, then thank the Lord.
Oh, thank the small mercies. Oh,
indeed. So my advice to you is to wait, and maybe wait a bit more.
Wait times 3, and then north.
Then maybe we'll do it. Andy Marsh says, what do you both think about collecting original retro hardware? Have you ever felt compelled to collect systems or games? I have software going back to the PS1 and N64. I have a PS2 Slim. I have an N64 as well, but I think it's bust. But beyond that, no. I'm happy with, I see. No, I get it. I get the. It must be played in original hardware. I'm happy with emulation. I think emulation for those old systems now is at such a good point. It's just barely noticeable, So, and I don't have the space.
No,
it's like you start collecting those kind of things, and all power to those people who do collect them. Fair play. You do whatever makes you happy. You do that. That's fine if you've got the money and you can afford it, because it's got retro has got an expensive, but that's fine. And it's not for me. No. What about you? Do you do it? You don't do it, do you?
No, I had some old systems, but I've never classed myself as a collector. I had an old Xbox. God knows what happened to that. Still got my Xbox 360 somewhere around. But other than that, I've got an Xbox One, a PS4, and a Switch, and all the retro stuff, all the old ones. I've got the C64, the recent one, what's it called, the Maxi. I don't have any original. I don't have any original hardware, nor do I have the space, nor do I have the desire to get stressed out about the chips getting old or whatever happens to them. I can't be bothered with that.
Exactly.
It's a whole. You need to recap that monitor and you need to switch out those chips. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. No, thanks. No, it's not the world for me.
No, but if it's your world, you do it.
Yeah, good. Collect away. Good luck with it.
Absolutely. Just be thankful that we're not in it because we'd drive the price up.
Yes, we would.
John Ebbs says, why was the Score Lord used to review games? And how much damage did it do to the magazine? I think this harmed its reputation a lot. I don't know. Maybe because they needed another reviewer. I don't know. To be honest, I only kind of casually look at the reviews in Zap. So, and by this point, I was completely tuned out of Zap. So I'd stopped reading it by issue 50 or so. So I don't know. Maybe it did. I think there was other things that harmed its reputation, probably more than the Score Lord reviewing games.
I think they were struggling for a format at this point. They'd screwed with the format, and all the real talent had left the building. So they were just, they were struggling to find a good way of presenting it, and that seemed to be a logical way. But I don't know that solely harmed its reputation. I think its reputation was harmed by hemorrhaging most of the talent out fairly early on, and then after that, the tone of the magazine completely changed for me. It's like it's reading a different thing now. So. Yeah,
it's very different now. There's some I have read a couple of the reviews. It's interesting. There are some interesting sort of angles that sometimes they do come out these days. I think it's better at this point, which we are at now. Although you hate the look, and I get it because it's turned into a comic. But the actual written content has actually tended to be a little bit better at this point where we're at 75, 76. Where I'm reading, sort of having a scan of some of the reviews, it does actually seem to be better than what was going before that, where it just didn't seem to have an identity. But it's in its last legs, so I don't know. I don't know. I think at this point, I think the market was dying, so that was probably doing more damage than anything. David Stringer, he asks, why all the hate for Jive Bunny? I know in retrospect it was awful, but my 12-year-old self liked it, and I actually listened to the originals as a direct result, so maybe not so bad. That is an angle that I haven't sort of considered. But, from us at the time, we were 17, 18-year-olds, and it was just, it was just the worst to us. It was just awful trash in the charts. And we didn't really go listen to the originals either. But I imagine if it's some kind of gateway to the original tunes, then that's fair enough, I guess. But they weren't, I don't think that was the intended point of those songs. It was just a cash grab for this kind of stuff, and it's awfully mixed, and it sounds dreadful and terrible. So that's kind of why I hated it. What about you?
Same. I just thought it was just a sea of exploitation. I never liked anything. I never liked the idea of it. And to be fair, Jive Bunny weren't alone. There was a whole bunch of producers that were getting all the sort of 60s tracks and just blending them into a sort of succession of nonsense. I mean, you think even before Jive Bunny, there was Hooked on Classics. I don't know if you remember that, where it just got the classical music and stuck a drum beat behind it. So it's not a new concept. Problem was that they wouldn't piss off. You had your one hit. Thank you for that. And then they just kept coming back with more and more and more and more and more. And it's like, look, it wasn't great the first time. Now all you're doing is poking a lion. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And I, okay, your 12-year-old self liked it. Fair enough. Kids like what they like, and that's fair. And if you listen to the originals, like you said, all good. But I think it probably it gave grannies something to dance to at weddings. And I'm not sure, that's not, okay, that's fine. But, at that point, at a certain point, they're going to demand the okey cokey. And you know what? Statistically speaking, old people are likely to get a very serious injury down the okey cokey. Left leg in, left leg out, snap. It's not good. You're just encouraging, it's a health and safety issue. So that's really my main problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you put your left leg in, you put your right hip out.
Exactly. In, out, shake it all back. Oh, Doris, no.
She was so young, only 83. No time to go.
I don't know, Terry, but I don't think your back's meant to bend that way.
Yeah. So, there you go. Jive Bunny. Andy Marsh asks, do you think that growing up with the C64 and other micros made you more appreciative of or helped you to recognise computer game development as an art form? Ooh.
Well, I can tell you this. if it wasn't for growing up the C64s, I wouldn't appreciate computers in the way that I do now. And since I've made a career out of using computers, I would wholesalely say that the C64 is what spiked my interest in computers. And that's the games, that's everything. And as I've come to respect later down the line, did it help me recognize computer game development? I didn't develop games on the C64 per se. You developed a couple with the kits, didn't you? But I didn't. But did it make me have a fundamental understanding of the ability to create something on a platform that is designed to do has lots of limitations, and to be able to create things by limitation is a real skill. And I've come to respect the ability of really good programmers to get so much out of that machine that it's beyond belief. And so, yes, it did, and continues to do that. Now, did it create a desire to play lots of games? Yes, initially, then not for a while. But once you've got those seeds planted in you, once you've played some of those C64 games that you remember, you will always remember them. And I still do. So I remember when I first played Mission Impossible. When I first played Impossible Mission. Mission Impossible? Impossible Mission.
Impossible Mission.
Remember when I first played Impossible Mission and hearing the speech, or Ghostbusters, and some of those memories for the C64, I still have them. And like I said to you before, I have very cherished memories of playing certain games. And the C64 is responsible, even with this podcast, trying to kill all of it, actually responsible for some of those amazing memories still. I kept playing Way of the Exploding Fist or International Karate Plus, and some of those amazing experiences that to this day I have such fond memories of. And that has really helped me understand games as a development platform. And talking to developers of that time, like John Hare as well, has really helped me see that how they went about creating that, what that process was. And that is quite interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. I think, obviously I wasn't so much into the programming of it, but I was, like I said, I did a little bit of game design on it with sort of Shook and Quill and things like that, and trying to make things. I was just a creative as an individual. I was just reduce things to create stuff. But I think it has, because that knowledge base, or that kind of, playing so many games as I did over that period of time from 80, probably earlier through the Atari, Binatones and all those kind of things. And you grow up on these games and in the arcade, you kind of see it develop and you kind of see it move, and you grow into these different sort of strands that kind of go in different directions. And there's you have the arcade side, and I was playing a lot in the arcade, very quick hit, and the design in those two, was obviously just to kill you off as quickly as possible to get more money in. But within those, there was some really interesting, new ways of playing, especially in terms of sort of more visceral stuff like your space areas and your big cabinets and stuff like that. But also the more addictive stuff, and the sort of your Green Berets and your Golden Axes and things like that. But then on the home side of things, home computers, there was some interesting stuff, like I said, things like the Eidolon, your sports games. So, track and field in the arcade, but your things like Summer Games 2 and World Games, and the way that, those kind of things would be like doing different things. You would, it wasn't just shooting aliens. It was doing kind of recognizable stuff and doing things like that. And then also as well, as much as it wasn't for me, games like, I could appreciate games like Elite for pushing and showing that galaxies could be rendered in these things and explored, and fill in the gaps, and things like Mercenary. They're not all for me, like I said, but I can appreciate the tech. And we've said this, I think we've come round to that way of thinking, that you appreciate the tech and you appreciate the ambition of these people to sort of cram in what they did into 32K or 64K. And I think that's one of the things I come at it from. It's like it's all, and it's also made me understand sort of thing that so much of it is smoke and mirrors. And I have this sort of, that's kind of helped me sort of to teach students and stuff. It's like, how do I get it to this? But no, you just need to make it look like that's happened. Just because it's all about smoke and mirrors. Video games, you don't shoot anyone. You press a button and a raycast happens, and something checks if something's been hit, and then that does an animation. Your brain says, "I've shot that." You haven't. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all make believe, and it's all and kind of, that was obviously, you had to have that imagination back then in the C64 days, because you had to fill in so many of the blanks, and it's kind of sort of thinking along those lines. Has helped that. And also, I had a gap in the mid-90s where I didn't play video games, but I came back with sort of, I think, playing Tomb Raider and Resident Evil, and I think it was GoldenEye at your house. I think you had the N64 from when you were working at Blockbuster, and it just blew my mind where what had happened in those 6 years, because we'd gone from playing like Monkey Island and stuff at your house, and then suddenly GoldenEye.
Yep.
that was such a massive jump. And it kind of made me go, oh, wow. But, I still had that grounding in like, I think that's the thing. It's like, maybe it's another thing. It's like, I know where we all know where the games came from. So we have this, we look at them now. I look at games now and I'm like, it looks incredible. And it annoys me so much when you just read stuff on the internet. It's like, oh, it looks crap. The shadows aren't right. It's like, you have no idea.
Yeah, very true.
So that kind of gets my goat a little bit. But, I think I'm going off topic. But yeah, I think it has made me really appreciate video games. And like you, was part of my sort of growth pattern towards my career and liking and what I like to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I have come to over the time of the podcast as well is the idea of computer game development as an art form. When somebody is very good at game design, it shows. And we start to see that. And so there are people that are really good artists and there are people that are really good game designers. And when those come together, that's when you get the really strong releases, the really good titles. When those things aren't quite there, then you might get a good artist, but you don't get the good game design, or you might get, and we've seen that quite a lot. But it's actually made me really appreciate the artistry of game design and the artistry of being able to make a really good game and then make the really good graphics for it. And so we've seen quite a few of those over the time when we've been really surprised on the C64 by the sheer power of what they can get out of that machine when it's in those kind of hands. And I've come to really respect that. And that's something it's a bit lost now when you've got a team of 90 developers or whatever it might be on something like Rockstar Games or something like that. And the
talk of thousands, there's more than thousands.
That's what I mean. But the finery of that game design is kind of lost because it's such a combined effort, and that's fair enough. But there's something about a graphic person working with a programmer and creating those things, and that's that indie spirit. But I've come to recognize it over time, over the C64's life, is that there were some people in there that were artists, and I mean coding artists. Design artists and graphic artists, and when they got together and it came together, they were formidable. And there's still a lot of talented people out there doing it. So that's something I've come to really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, Mubar, last question, asks us, what do our families think of our C64 related podcasting hijinks? They're supportive. They think it's I think they're surprised we've been going for so long.
Yeah, I think definitely surprised. I think they're good. If you still got them games to play, goodness, haven't you finished yet?
No.
Yeah, so partners understanding, kids, they think it's cool. Parents, my 85-year-old mum wouldn't know what a podcast was if I told her about it.
Yeah, my parents are no longer with us, so but no. But yeah, my brother still thinks it's cool. He thinks it's funny that I'm still doing it. My son is just like,
yeah, that's great.
He's 16. He's like,
How many downloads you had? Wow, that's amazing. Right, on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's what I get. Oh, it's really good, Dad.
Yeah.
Can I have tea?
Yeah.
Okay.
My eldest says to me, he said to me, "Oh, it's brilliant." And I was, "Have you ever listened to it?" No. Oh, thanks for that.
No, they're not our audience. I've come very much. I couldn't force it on my son. I'd be like, "Would you listen to it?" Like, no. He wouldn't know what I was on about half the time. So yeah. But partners, like you said, yes, understanding.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah, that's it. That's all our questions. That's quite a lot.
Plenty, though. That was quite a lot.
Yeah, that was good. But I like that. I like when our patrons ask us questions. You can ask us. We probably have another one before we do all this. We finish it all. So if you want to do that, you could do that by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Zapped to the Past. And you can get in on all the shenanigans. So yeah, you can support us there. You can support us at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Zapped to the Past. You can buy our merch at zappedtothepast.shop. Have a hat or a t-shirt or a cup.
You can.
Or all three. Okay. You can do that if you want. You can just come and chat to us on social media or leave us a review. Reviews are really cool. If you can leave us a review somewhere, Apple Podcasting, Podcast Addict, anywhere really, Spotify, I think you can leave them wherever. But if you could, if you do one thing today, if you listen to this and you go, I like this, then go, okay, I'm just going to put a quick review down to bright much, but that would be lovely. I don't think there's much else to say. We are going to be taking a break next week, so there'll be no podcast next week. Work and things, just we've tried to we've had stuff going on. It's been Easter, family stuff, work stuff has just been piling up, and so we've managed to get these out and the battle pilots, but just getting round to, we could play the games and not, we owe it to ourselves and to you and to what we do now, that it's not just a case of just playing the games and knocking 5-minute reviews out. We don't do that. So we need a bit of time. So there is stuff going on. It's nothing bad or anything like that, but we're just a bit busy at the moment. Yeah. So we will be back in 2 weeks' time with our next episode, which I think is August. Is it August?
It's August, yeah.
August 1991. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with that. So that's about it from us. Have you got anything you'd like to say, Graham, before we go?
No. I'd just like to announce that I have officially decided to paint some Warhammer for the first time in about 10 years.
Where are you going then?
So showing Adrian now, here is my Ultramarine currently having its base coat supplied.
Very good.
I don't know what's possessed me to do that, but I have contacted the local bank just to let them know. So
the bank manager has called you in for a conversation just to discuss your options.
Are you sure about this? No, and to be fair, and if you want to know a reason why, is because firstly, I happened upon some in a box in the garage. Just that I was looking through a box of stuff and I just came across them in a box. I was like, I may as well finish them off. I never really got to them. And the other thing is that they now have a new series of paints called contrast paints, which I find absolutely fascinating. So I just wanted to see what that would be like. And it's quite an interesting experience, especially when your eyesight's crap. So that's quite good.
What are contrast paints?
So they are it's quite complicated to way to describe it, but you can do it the old-fashioned way. So you can do an undercoat, base coat, layer paints,
and then shades. Inks and dry brushing.
There's shades now, and dry brushing, and they're layer paints and shades, and stuff. You can go that way if you want to do it that way. Okay. Or you can do it the newfangled way, which is that you undercoat with a kind of a lighter color, and then you get what's called the contrast paints. And the contrast paints are actually semi-translucent paints that you can paint over and just literally splash all over the model, and they do the base coat, the shade, and the job of the shade paint and the layer paints all in one go. So it's quite fascinating to watch when you paint them on, and it literally paints the miniature and puts all the shading in automatically. It's quite miraculous. It's not as straightforward as that, but that is the purpose of them. And so you, for example, you would normally base coat like an ultramarine in Macragge blue, and then you would do all the other stuff. But this you don't. You'd undercoat it in a light grey or white, and then you would paint the contrast paint on, and the contrast paint would then actually paint the blue on and put all the shading in and everything else automatically. It's quite cool. So I just wanted to see if it was as good as they say. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's actually quite an interesting way of painting them. They're just different styles of painting miniatures. The cool thing is you can do really nice blends with the contrast paints, which is a really nice thing. So because you can blend them really easily on a wet palette, and then when you want to create really nice blended effects, you don't have to go through that endless painting of coats, with watered down paints, which is normally how you would do it. You can use the contrast paint, and then while it's still wet, you can put another contrast paint in it, and it automatically blends. So you can create really good tonal effects on miniatures really easily, and that is really, really nice. So I just wanted to see what it was like. It is cool. It is very cool.
Yeah. Cool. Just one last thing I just wanted to say. Thank you to Steve Erickson on the Retro Asylum podcast. He gave us a really good shout out this week and the Knight Rider episode. Yeah, because our download numbers have just spiked up. Because anytime we get mentioned on the Retro Asylum podcast, people go, oh, and they listen and they come on. And I can always tell someone said something because our numbers went boing.
Okay, and, cool. Well, thank you. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's really good. So thank you for that, Steve.
They've been behind us for quite a while. They've mentioned us a few times. They're such a cool bunch of guys in that podcast.
Yeah, and it's such a really good episode this week on Knight Rider in general. So that was very good. And I liked the one the other week on Terabyte. So obviously they do great stuff. They're much wider than we are. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you for that as well. So that was really cool. I caught me by surprise listening. I was like, oh wow, cool. Thank you very much.
So cool.
They were sort of talking about because we were saying we're getting to the end of the thing and what are our next plans, and we don't know. Just to sort of say we're not sure. We don't know at this point in time. So it's an off the cuff question, but we've still got I think 30 odd episodes planned to get to the end of the magazines. So those are in that's going to take us into next year at least. At that point we'll see what happens. But no, thank you very much. That was great. And on that note, I think we should say goodbye. So as ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Graham, I'm now going to have to buy more Warhammer paints, aren't I, Raddings?
And you've been listening to Graham's bank manager frothing at the mouth at the thought of what's going to happen, the amount of money that's going to disappear out of that, and the loans that he's going to have to accrue to fund his habit.
You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong. We will see you again in 2 weeks' time, when we'll be back with August 1991. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zapped 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @Zapptother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zapped to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings, and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zapped 64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.